Did you know that America almost had a 14th state called Franklin? It's a little-known chapter in early American history, but for a brief moment, the dream of Franklin was very real. Tucked away in the rugged Appalachian Mountains, this would-be state was born out of both necessity and hope. For 4 years, from 1784 to 1788, Franklin existed with its own governor, its own courts, and even its own set of laws. The people of Franklin tried to build a functioning government, holding elections and passing legislation just like any other state. The settlers who lived west of the Appalachians felt abandoned by North Carolina. They were taxed by a distant government, but received little protection or support in return. Life on the frontier was harsh, and the dangers were many. Hostile raids, wild animals, and the constant threat of lawlessness. Isolated and desperate, these pioneers decided to take matters into their own hands. They gathered in meetings, debated their future, and ultimately chose to form their own state, seeking safety, stability, and the right to govern themselves. Creating Franklin was a bold act of rebellion, echoing the spirit of the American Revolution. These settlers believed in the ideals of liberty and self-determination, and they were willing to risk everything to achieve them. The people of Franklin were a tough and diverse group: farmers, hunters, former soldiers, and families who had braved the wilderness. They believed they'd earned the right to govern themselves after years of hardship and sacrifice. For these settlers, Franklin represented more than just a new government. It was a symbol of their hopes for security, prosperity, and a better life in a wild and untamed land. They dreamed of building a community where their children could thrive. But the story of Franklin is not just one of hope. It's also a tale of courage, conflict, and ultimately, heartbreak. The dream of statehood faced fierce opposition, both from neighboring states and from within. In the end, Franklin would become a lost chapter in America's story. So what happened to the state that almost was? Let's journey back in time and discover the fate of Franklin, the forgotten 14th state. Franklin's land was beautiful. Rolling hills, deep valleys, and endless forests stretching as far as the eye could see. The landscape was breathtaking, with morning mists curling over the mountains and sunlight glinting off winding rivers. It was a place that seemed untouched, wild, and full of possibility. The soil was rich and dark, perfect for farming. Early settlers dreamed of bountiful harvests and new beginnings, believing this land could provide everything they needed to build a better life for themselves and their families. To many, it was a promised land, a place of hope and opportunity. But it was also the edge of the known world, a true frontier where every step forward brought new risks. The wilderness was unforgiving, and danger lurked in every shadow. Life was harsh and demanding. Settlers had to build their homes from scratch, using only the trees around them. They crafted their own tools, learned to hunt and farm, and relied on their own resourcefulness to survive. Food was often scarce, and sickness could sweep through a settlement without warning. Starvation was a constant threat, and every winter brought new challenges to overcome. Yet the greatest threat came from conflict with the Cherokee, who had lived on this land for generations. To them, the settlers were intruders, and tensions quickly escalated into violence. Raids and attacks became a grim reality. Settlers learned to defend their homes, standing together against danger. These struggles forged a toughness and unity that would come to define the people of Franklin. With no government to protect them, communities had to rely on each other. Neighbors became family, and cooperation was essential for survival. Every hardship shared made their bonds stronger. Through adversity, the settlers developed a fierce desire for self-rule. They believed only they could truly understand and govern their land, a land of both promise and peril. Their determination to protect their homes and shape their own destiny would become the driving force behind Franklin's story. The struggle for safety and independence was constant, shaping every aspect of daily life and leaving a lasting mark on the people who called Franklin home. In the end, the frontier spirit, resilient, hopeful, and unyielding, was both their greatest strength and their greatest challenge, defining the fate of Franklin for generations to come. In 1784, delegates from western North Carolina counties met in Jonesboro. North Carolina had ceded their land to the federal government, leaving settlers in limbo. Feeling betrayed, they declared independence and drafted a constitution for Franklin. Their government mirrored North Carolina's with a legislature, governor, and courts. Lacking money, they accepted animal skins, tobacco, and whiskey as taxes, frontier solutions for frontier problems. Franklin's leaders petitioned Congress for statehood, hoping to become the 14th state. Their government was a grassroots experiment in democracy and self-determination. But recognition from the United States would prove elusive. Franklin's future hung in the balance. No story of Franklin is complete without John Sevier. A frontier hero and skilled leader, Sevier was the heart of the movement. Though cautious at first, he became Franklin's first and only governor, giving the cause credibility. Sevier juggled diplomacy with native tribes, led the militia, and managed daily affairs. He wrote to Congress and Benjamin Franklin, seeking support for the fledgling state. Sevier's leadership inspired hope, but Franklin faced constant threats and little outside help. For the settlers, Sevier was more than a governor. He was their champion. But even heroes can't save a state alone. Franklin's greatest threat came not from foreign invaders or distant governments, but from within its own borders. The seeds of discord were sown among neighbors, friends, and even former allies, threatening to tear apart the fragile unity that had built the state of Franklin. In a stunning reversal, North Carolina decided to reclaim the land it had once ceded, abruptly asserting its authority and creating a situation where two rival governments now claimed the same territory. This move set the stage for a dramatic and often chaotic power struggle. At the heart of the conflict were two powerful figures: John Sevier, the charismatic leader of Franklin, and John Tipton, a staunch supporter of North Carolina. Once united in purpose, they became bitter enemies, each rallying supporters to their cause and deepening the divide. The feud didn't just affect politicians, it tore through communities. Neighbors who had once stood side by side in battle now found themselves on opposite sides of a bitter dispute. Families were split, friendships ended, and the sense of community that had defined the frontier began to unravel. With two governments came two sets of laws, two sets of courts, and two groups of tax collectors, each demanding loyalty and payment. Confusion reigned as settlers were forced to choose sides, and frequent clashes broke out in the streets and courthouses. The feud reached its violent peak in 1788 at the infamous Battle of Franklin. Sevier's men, determined to assert their authority, laid siege to Tipton's farm in the dead of winter, turning a quiet homestead into a battlefield. Shots rang out in the snow, a sheriff lost his life, and the defenders managed to repel Sevier's forces. The defeat was a turning point, signaling the unraveling of Franklin's hopes for independence. The unity and hope that had once inspired the people of Franklin were shattered by infighting, confusion, and a growing sense of despair. Meetings devolved into arguments, and the dream of a new state began to fade. As the days passed, the vision of Franklin as a beacon of independence slipped further away, leaving behind only memories and abandoned dreams. In the end, it was not an outside enemy, but internal conflict and division that proved just as deadly, extinguishing the flame of Franklin's ambition and leaving a lasting mark on the region's history. After the Battle of Franklin, the state unraveled. Sevier's authority collapsed and most settlers accepted North Carolina's pardon to end the chaos. Franklin's government dissolved, and by 1789, the state was gone. Congress had refused Franklin's petition for statehood, fearing conflict with North Carolina. Without federal recognition, Franklin was doomed. Sevier was arrested for treason, but escaped punishment, remaining a local hero. The former Franklinites were absorbed back into North Carolina, but their desire for self-government endured. In 1789, North Carolina ceded the land again, this time for good, paving the way for a new future. The spirit of Franklin would not die with the state. Franklin's failure was a lesson, not an end. The experience prepared settlers for the next chapter, the creation of the Southwest Territory in 1790. John Sevier, once a rebel, became a respected leader and Tennessee's first governor. The ambitions of Franklin shaped the birth of Tennessee, admitted as the 16th state in 1796. The spirit of Franklin, Independence, resilience, and self-rule became the spirit of Tennessee. Its legacy lives on in county names, town histories, and the state's character. The story of Franklin reminds us that nation building is messy, but the fight for self-determination defines America. Though Franklin vanished, its spirit helped build a more perfect union.